At 3:57 in the morning, I stood barefoot in my dark living room, watching the grainy feed from my backyard camera as nearly 40 strangers gathered outside my locked gate, shivering in hoodies, dragging coolers across the concrete. And right in the center of them stood the HOA president, Mara Jennings, holding a pair of bolt cutters like she was officiating some kind of ritual. She lifted them, tapped the metal against the lock I paid for, and said with a voice that carried through the pre-dawn stillness, "Cut it. The community needs this." My phone was already in my hand when the lock snapped. All I said to the dispatcher was, "They're about to pour into my yard." I guess if you want to understand how I ended up here, watching the people who supposedly represent neighborhood harmony try to force their way into my property, you have to start with the simple truth. I'm not part of Willowbend Estates' HOA. My house predates it. The original builder signed an exemption letter so airtight that even the smug board member couldn't reinterpret it. But people like Mara, they don't accept limits. To them, a boundary is just a challenge wearing a smile. My name is Evan Cole. 35, carpenter by trade, introvert by nature. I bought this house for two reasons. The tall fence around the yard, and the fact that no association had jurisdiction over anything I owned. For 2 quiet years, it was perfect until the day Mara got elected as president. She's the kind of person who introduces herself with her title before her name. The kind who looks at private property like it's a puzzle she can rearrange. The first time she appeared at my door, clipboard in hand. She said, "You are technically adjacent to association property. It would help if you cooperated occasionally." I told her calmly, "I'm not in your HOA." And she smiled the way people smile when they think you're wrong, and eventually they'll prove it. From that moment, I became her personal crusade. Flyers stuffed into my mailbox, handwritten notes telling me my trash cans were affecting neighborhood aesthetics, warnings about imaginary violations, invitations to mandatory events I never agreed to. I didn't rise to any of it. I'm not the yelling type. I document. I file. I wait. People like her always show their hand eventually. Her moment came at 3:54 a.m. on a Tuesday. My phone vibrated like it was trying to escape the nightstand. The caller ID said unknown. I almost ignored it, but something in my gut tugged and I answered with a growly, "Yeah." Her voice hit me like cold water, too cheerful, too rehearsed, too wrong for the hour. "Hi, Evan, this is Mara from the association. I wanted to give you a heads up about the community swim event this morning. We're expecting about 100 attendees." I sat upright. "You called the wrong number. I don't have anything to do with your pool." "Oh no," she chirped. "We're using your pool." For a second, I thought I misheard her. "My pool?" "My private pool behind my locked 6-foot fence on my exempt lot." She continued unfazed. "Your yard is centrally located. Better lighting, better size. We announced it in the newsletter." "I don't get your newsletter." "Well, we put them in all mailboxes," she said, lightly irritated. "Anyway, people will start arriving at 6 o'clock. Vendors might arrive sooner. Just a little heads up." I told her no. Calm, steady, exact. "No one is using my property. No one is entering my yard. Cancel it." Her voice cooled instantly. "This isn't up to you, Evan. The board voted. It's a community asset." "My property is not a community asset." "Well," she replied, "that's not how we interpret the covenants." I hung up on her. I never hang up on people. But there's a point where talking stops being communication and starts being permission. I wasn't giving her any, of course. Minutes later, another call came, a man this time. Too casual, too smug. "This is Chad, Association Events Coordinator." Mara said, "You're confused about the swim party." I almost laughed. "Nobody is coming onto my property." He sighed the way a parent sighs at a child refusing broccoli. "Look, Evan, the neighborhood needs unity. People already planned their morning. Don't be the guy who ruins a charity event for a technicality. A technicality? I said, you mean the law? His voice dropped into condescension. We already rented equipment. We're doing a good thing here. You can't call the cops on a community gathering. Watch me, he snorted. See you at 6 o'clock. I set my cameras to high alert, spread my exemption documents on the kitchen table, and called the non-emergency line. The officer on the phone told me I'd need to call 911 if people trespassed. Document everything, she said, as if I needed the reminder. A little before 5:30, my neighbor Sarah, one of the few sane people in Willow Bend, knocked softly on my door. She wore pajama pants, a beanie, and the expression of someone who already knew things were about to get stupid. You weren't kidding, she whispered when she saw the stack of papers. You want backup? Just eyes, I said, and maybe a camera. She held up her phone, already recording. The first car arrived at 5:39, then another, then 6 more. My phone buzzed non-stop. Driveway motion, porch motion, side gate motion. A line of SUVs unloaded families like this was some dawn carnival. Parents dragging coolers, kids in towels, a guy with a Bluetooth speaker tucked under his arm. And then I saw him, a clipboard-carrying idiot in a polo embroidered with the HOA logo, Chad, directing people toward my backyard, Sarah muttered. This is insane. Insane didn't begin to cover it. When the first crowd reached my gate, they rattled it, confused. A woman said, "Why is it locked?" Another whispered, "Are we early?" And then Mara strutted into view like she was leading a parade. She didn't knock. She didn't call. She just pointed at my gate and said to Chad, "Did you bring the cutters?" He lifted them like a prize. Sarah's jaw dropped. They're really doing it. I dialed 911. My name is Evan Cole, I told the dispatcher. I have about 30 people on my property line about to force entry. The HOA organized an event here without my consent. They are preparing to break my lock. The dispatcher stayed calm. Officers are on the way. Stay inside. The lock snapped like a brittle twig. A little cheer rose from the group as if breaking into someone's private yard was just part of the festivities. My gate swung open. Strangers streamed inside, setting bags on my chairs, kids dipping toes into my water, a man placing a cooler directly on one of my cedar tables. And then the sirens came. Red and blue washed over the street, turning the crowd into a tableau of startled faces and guilty hesitations. 2 officers stepped out. Officer Morales, tall, heavy, set, already tired of the morning. And Officer Clean, younger, sharp-eyed, ready for trouble. I opened my front door and stepped onto the porch with a kind of controlled calm that didn't feel like me, but suited the moment perfectly. Morales called out, "You, Evan." "I am." "You've got trespassers' backyard." I said, "Forced entry." "Cut my lock." His expression didn't change, but something hardened slightly around his eyes. "Stay on the porch." Sarah lifted her phone, still recording. We watched them turn the corner into the yard. I couldn't see the crowd directly from where I stood. But my cameras showed everything. The officers appeared on screen like storm clouds rolling into a picnic. "Police department," Morales said, voice carrying through the speakers. "Everyone step away from the pool." Instant confusion, voices rising, someone said loudly. "But the HOA approved the event," another parent muttered. "I thought this was the community center." One kid just started crying. Morales ignored all of them. "Who is in charge here on camera?" Mara stepped forward, posture straight, fake smile glued on. "Good morning, officers. I'm the president, Mara Jennings. We organized this charity swim." "This is private property," Morales said flatly. "The homeowner did not consent to any event." Chad tried to jump in. "We have authority over shared amenities." "This is not a shared amenity," Morales replied. This is a fenced private yard. Did you cut this lock? The camera caught it perfectly. Mara shifting the bolt cutters behind her leg. As if the officers were too stupid to notice the orange handles peeking out, she said, "Well, the gate was locked, so that's not what I asked." Morales's voice didn't rise, but it didn't have to. "Did you cut this lock?" Silence. A parent near the deep end whispered. "She said the homeowner volunteered." Another stepped back, murmuring. "She told us it was at the clubhouse." "Everyone not a resident of this address," Morales said, "needs to leave the yard immediately." The crowd dispersed fast, embarrassed, muttering, disgusted. Kids wrapped in towels, parents carrying snacks they never unpacked. A cooler spilled ice across my deck. Someone tracked muddy footprints across the concrete as they hurried out. When Morales called me down, I walked with the same quiet resolve I'd held since the first phone call. He asked his questions. I answered simply, factually, handing over deed copies, the exemption letter, timestamps, the saved recordings. Sarah nodded beside me. "I filmed everything," she said. Mara snapped. "This is unnecessary. Evan is being combative. He refuses to be part of the community." Morales turned to her. "Ma'am, you cut a lock, entered private property without consent, and brought dozens of people with you. That is trespassing and criminal mischief," Chad muttered. "This is a civil misunderstanding." "Not today it isn't," Morales said. "You two will be cited." I didn't smile. I didn't need to. Watching Mara's expression collapse into a tight-lipped tremor was enough. The first crack in a facade she'd polished for years. As the officers finished paperwork, the morning light finally broke over the rooftops. The crowd was gone. My yard was a mess of wet footprints and half-melted ice. The cut lock lay on the deck like a discarded piece of evidence. Cold, clean, undeniable. I closed the gate gently, the broken metal still hanging loose. The yard quiet for the first time since dawn. Sarah whispered. "You okay?" "Better than her," I said. The air settled. No cheers, no victory laps, just the cool morning breeze moving across my fence. The one line they should never have crossed. And as I stared at the empty pool, still rippling from the chaos, I understood the one rule people like Mara never learn. In a battle HOA fight, authority isn't about titles or newsletters. It's about knowing exactly where your boundary is, and having the spine to defend, and like Cher HOA Battelle.